Happy Sunday, and welcome back to another retake of the world of Counter-Strike. It's been a bit of an odd week. Technically, a lot of Counter-Strike to watch and a lot to follow, but it doesn't always feel that big when it's online events and smaller things. But still, we've got a lot to break down, and joining me as he does every Sunday is Quacke of Dust2.se fame. I mean, it's been a bit of a difficult one to care about, especially like with the Fnatic stuff. But we're going to start with the biggest news, I think, and that's the BetBoom event. It's not really news, it's an event, but it's been something to follow. It's been a bit odd. I guess we have the most expected grand final, and in many ways, a lot of things did follow the plan we expected. But Virtus.pro were definitely on most people's lists as teams to go through, but they just weren't able to do it.
Yeah, I said this in the pre-show. Everything in this event went exactly as expected, except for one of the things that I wanted to happen. So I'm kind of disappointed by the very little amount of variety that we got relative to expectation in this event. Yeah, Virtus.pro kind of doing. I don't know. Full disclosure, I haven't watched a lot of these games. I'm mostly basing this out of the stats sheet, but Electronic is at the bottom, and I know seen some criticism of like Norbert. I've seen some criticism of like Jame. What do you chalk this up to? Like, what do you chalk this underperformance up to?
I think they
Is it?
are like if you try to look at the stat sheets, you're not going to get a full picture, I don't think. But in theory, things could have worked out. Like, they beat Falcons already 2-0. They then faced them again in their decider. And I think it's just a poor map 3. More than anything else. Like, if you watch the game, Ancient just really didn't go as expected. Jame was a bit off. The calling wasn't great. I mean, Snappy had himself an absolute day, I guess, on that map 3. Like, he had a really good call, a really good read on the game. And he had great performances from his players that you maybe didn't expect it as much from. Like, it wasn't the Sumpires show so much. It was Madden, it was Dupree, it was everyone stepping up. And like that's kind of the win condition you need out of Falcons right now because they are not star heavy. They've got a lot of players who are good in roles and good at doing what they do, but no real superstar carry outside of Sumpires when he's feeling it. So they managed to get enough out of all the pieces. And Snappy, relatively outcalled Jame, which led to this map 3 win. But I don't know, if I'm Virtus.pro, I'm a little worried that I've had interviews already that say, like, Electronic wants to play like this. The fact that Electronic's coming in and having a voice, potentially one that conflicts with Jame, could be a problem. Because it has been so much about the James show and the James system and how all these pieces who are from often very inexperienced backgrounds aren't particularly loud voices. Now there's more than one, alpha in the pack. There's more than one head honcho, more than one CEO. This company's always been very top heavy. Let's put it that way. I'm not sure splitting responsibilities is something they are quite expecting, and it might take a little bit longer to adjust to than we really hoped as outside observers. We always saw this like, oh, bloody hell, super team. But Electronic has different ideas.
I think Electronic also said that he was really interested to play in James style. So I wonder if it really is that he's like picking like being the second guy and like he's having a different voice. Like if that really is the case, but yeah. I wonder if it's just growing pains that they'll work this through. Like you got a new player. He is a great player, Electronic, so like there's no question about that. But is it just that this is something you're going to work through later on, or is this just a sign of that this team is never going to work? So I don't know. There was also a rumor that they're going to change coach. I don't know if I buy into that.
Yeah,
rumor,
I've seen that, but I'm not into that at all. I want to see a lot more before I start making that change.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that change just because Dustin has been there for a long time, and I talked about this to someone earlier. We always put like when we talk about systems, like good teams with good systems, we always talk about one person making them happen. Like we always talk about the Blade system or the Dust or the James system, but like there is still a component that the coach and IGL, in terms of building a system, the coach and IGL are still a unit in a sense, and it's hard to know, especially with like CS teams like Virtus Pro. We don't know if it's the James system or the Jame and Dustin system, just because Jame might be the more media-facing person out of the two, or like how much did the boomage component of it all contribute to the Blade system? Not a huge amount, I'm guessing, because they also kind of worked with different colors, like with Electronic and with I guess it was just Electronic. Even Alexi B kind of works out. So how much like it's a pairing kind of thing, but we always just give credit to one of them. So I wonder, like, is Dastan just there doing nothing? Would they be better bringing in a different coach? Like, I'd be okay with the move because we don't see the inside of Virtus Pro.
Yeah,
So
it'd be interesting to find out exactly what portion of it is Dastan, because maybe coaches, whilst they might work with their IGL to set up a system, if in this case it's very much James' vision, you might see Dastan being more of just a prep guy. He's almost more like you'd expect an analyst, except he's actually going to be coming up with solutions behind the team. When there's a timeout called, he can chime in, unlike the analyst in question. So maybe they do bring in someone who's going to have a bigger opinion about how they're playing, how themselves, like as a team, are setting up. I don't really want to. I want to keep it the way it is. Let it figure itself out, because you're not going to lose every series like in a tight game with James like doing sweet fuck all on map 3. Like, you're not going to have that happen, I don't think, too often, especially once you get used to each other and you no longer have to think about how to play with each other and you just play. I think at that point you'll be back to, I think, being the monster that everyone expected you to be, because everyone looked at this roster come together and go, oh damn, we're screwed again.
Yeah.
Thankfully, so far we haven't been.
Yeah, it might come. It might come.
It might come eventually. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the next big thing to talk about, obviously, is a big move that happened. A lot of people were expecting this. It was leaked ahead of time, and that's Heroic signing Dexter. And now they made it out of their group pretty much as expected. If you looked at the rest of the teams in there, it was MIBR, Aurora, and then Spirit, favourites to go through in first place. Heroic took care of business against MIBR twice, but in both cases, they dropped a map. They dropped a map to a team that's from a weaker region. There's still some young players coming up. I think
they dropped the team to the Insani show.
Yeah, they dropped a map to Insani basically every time. And Insani's great, we know that. He's probably the best player that come out of Brazil. I mean, since that amazing major winning roster, appeared on the scene. Like, he's the best Brazilian we've seen. So no surprises that he can win him a map. But yeah, some of the games are a little hard fought. But I think the big news is how has Dexter been performing? That's what everyone wants to talk about. It's not Heroic win games or whatever. It's just the Dexter of it all. And he's got decent numbers. The couple maps I watched of their games, he still felt a bit like Dexter. He still had some of his impetus remaining. But it wasn't all out. It wasn't like max power Dexter that we got used to at times, where he's literally calling the shots, making the plays, winning the clutches, and screaming, giving massive like atomic high fives. Like, it wasn't quite bombastic Dexter.
Yeah, it's a good debut event. Probably, not having too much practice with this team. It's a good performance. Making semifinals as well, making it out of that group, because while MIBR are mostly the Insani show, I think they are a little bit legit. Like, I probably would have expected them to go last, and then Aurora would be the one that would be fighting with Heroic for that final playoff spot. But Aurora just kind of didn't do anything, and MIBR actually managed to put some stuff together every now and again. So, I mean, they get over that hurdle, which is nice. And yeah, he's topping the stats sheets. Like, compared to Nikoros, who was absolutely bottoming out on this team.
Sure.
This has worked thus far. I guess the next step would be to actually make something of it. Like, the next event, we might want to see something more out of Heroic with Dexter. This event, I think they've cleared the bar, even if it was a pretty low bar. Yeah. No, it was a low bar. It's a horribly low bar.
Compared to what we expect from a team who plays all the big lands, who have pretty big names, who've historically been a really good team. Yeah, this is a fairly low bar for them to cross. Aurora, they're such a streaky team, man. Like, if you're not playing them basically online during one of their hot streaks, they're not that scary. They're really
Mm.
not that scary. I think it speaks to their like a sort of a lack of a tactical foundation rather than anything else. Like
Yeah.
they just don't have the system surrounding the players to really make it consistent. It's rather just when this combination of fraggers is fragging, yeah, they can win most games. Like when you
Yeah.
have Deco, Kenzie, Norway just smacking heads off and then Result just to boot, yeah, you're going to win a lot of matches, but when they come across like tougher opponents, when they play lands, when they actually get like pulled off a little bit,
Mm.
they tend to be very beatable. So in that sense, not really adding much difficulty to the equation. I think finally something to touch on. Sorry, if you have more on Aurora.
No.
Okay, good. I think to touch on briefly is Falcons making it out of groups. Now, speaking of low bars, considering this is a team that's been assembled, it's supposed to be like a super team type thing with the full backing of like the Saudi crown. They're supposed to be one hell of a roster. The fact that we're like kind of looking at this result, and personally, I'm like, oh wow,
Mm.
because I think a bit shocking compared to what they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
I literally saw them get out of groups. Like, oh, they made it out of groups. Their group is it's the tougher of the two, but it's still such a small achievement, and I think it speaks to like the calamity that it's been watching this roster. They then got crushed by Spirit in their semi-final, but the fact that they were able to eke out a win against VP to make it through is worth celebrating.
Yeah.
Considering the lows they've reached, that's worth being happy about.
I think that map against like where Madden really went big against VP. I think that's pretty much his only good map out of this, or his good series anyway, out of this event. Because he was horrible in the first game against VP. And he had like the one good map against BetBoom, but then he was kind of mid even on the 1-1 with like huge numbers. And then he got completely stomped in spirit in the Spirit game. Even the map they lost against VP in that second game wasn't particularly good. So as much as we give Madden credit for showing up in that final game, which kind of put them into playoffs, he's very much the bottom player on this team for this event, which kind of paints a different picture. He's worse than Snappy in the average, but he was big in that one very important game. It's Sun Pies is doing great. I think this kind of shows just what Falcons are right now. They have no stars. They have 1 star at most, and only really when he's feeling it. I think it's like they need Dupree wasn't the move to make here, or perhaps it was. I think they might be suffering a bit because Dupree has been more successful than he was supposed to have been or should have been, and then they're going to end up in a situation where like, well, Dupree is doing great, Magisk is doing great, Madden is doing just fine, but we really need to bring someone else in here, so we're going to have to cut someone who probably doesn't really deserve it on an individual level eventually. But I think they also know that. They also know that like, all right, we brought in someone who can shell out a decent level of performance fairly consistently at a top level, and like someone who can work with like building this team, because I think they still aren't there. They aren't yet at the stage where like they've built a team. Because I mean, they have made a lot of roster moves since building this team just 6 months ago. We've already had Boris leave, Simple come in for a bit, then Simple didn't play with them anymore, and then Dupree came in, and it's just I no longer see this team as being even potentially an event winning team even in the far future. They need to do something big, and they're not there yet. They're
No, it's a
not
massive.
they're not even there. They're not even close to like the foundation that you need to attract the properly good players who will win you events. So like I think what I wasn't hoping for this because I don't really like Falcons that much and like the thing they're trying to do. But I think what a Falcons fan would have been hoping for was for this year, 2024, they build a solid foundation, a foundation solid enough to say to Nico and Monesi, guys, look at this. This is a good team, but if you guys come in, it's going to be a great team. And like they are nowhere near that foundation yet. Like this team is even less attractive to a player like Nico or Monesi than it was like half a year ago when it was actually like on the cards. So I just don't see it at all. So yeah, speaking of low bars, they just
Falcons, okay, what I was about to say. The gulf between where they are and where they need to be is massive. And
Mm,
it's looking like, honestly, you need a roster overhaul to make this work long term. Because,
mm.
look, if you just keep Magus, Dupree, Pius, Snappy, cut Madden for someone, maybe you can find a replacement that, improves the team a little bit. But then you still have the problem of, well, Magiska's not in his prime form. He's still a really good player. We all know that. We saw him Vitality, and we saw it at times on this roster. But he's not like in his prime. Dupree is, even though he outperforms our expectations every time, our expectations for Dupree are so low
Yep.
that that doesn't mean that he's actually like a match winner. So I think honestly, I don't want to say just make 3 moves or like cut 2 players, go looking. But if they wanted to make this work, I think BlameF had to go to a different team with an F. Like, we're talking that kind of change.
Yeah.
That had to be the level of move they make. Missing out on Simple, getting Dupree, and now being stuck with this roster is a bit of an issue. And what they can build with this roster that actually remains is thoroughly underwhelming. Like, what long term, they can maybe become an established group stage team.
Yeah.
It's just
Basically.
not good enough.
Yeah,
So
it just
they
isn't.
they're going to have the occasional playoff where everyone popped off at exactly the right second. I mean, in bigger events than this one, where it took this still, despite being a small event, it took everyone popping off at the same time in a
Mm,
miracle to actually
mm.
make it out of the group stage.
They have an IGL, they have a Star Opera, and then they have 3 third riflers. Like there's no.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Where's the superstar who's gonna bring you into like actual contention? Like yeah, no, he's just nowhere. And I don't think they can make this move now because they kind of missed out on the like post major transfer shuffle. I don't think we get a big shuffle this summer. I think we get maybe 1 or 2 players moving here or there, but it's not like we're gonna have like this huge player market where like everyone's contract is ending and you're going to be able to make transfers. I don't think we get that until 2025. And then there's also the danger that you have no more partner structures, no more ESL ranking invites. You have to actually perform to perform. Like there's, yeah, then there's a whole different threat. And at that point, if you do you want to be building a team in 2025, or do you want to have a team built that can just come out of the gate immediately?
Not
I
100%
think,
built.
yeah.
100%.
So I mean, they're kind of on the clock. I think there is going to be roster changes, but I don't think we're going to see even an opportunity for them to sign the mouse guys or the face guys or anyone off of Vitality or even anyone from G2 or anyone from like I think all of those players are now locked down because we had the post major shuffle and nobody really moved. So um,
Mm,
I think they're going to have a hard time making that move, but they need to make that move. So we might see something like, oh, they bring someone out of OG, or like they bring something from the bottom, but then it's like you already have 4 guys on your bench
yeah.
who you tried that with. You have MHL, you have Boris, you have Lonix, like you already have those sort of tier 2 guys that you would have said are talents a couple of years ago, or even just a couple of months ago. Um, and you're gonna make that move again? I don't know. I don't know.
The only thing I can think of right now, in terms of potential moves that make sense, would improve the team, is that we've seen a little bit of, I wouldn't say turmoil, but we're starting to hear negative things coming out of the Liquid camp. We're starting to hear that, hey, maybe Canadian Canadian system, including multiple Canadians, has
Mm.
not been applied really, and he's kind of in this hybrid state, and they're looking to cut him now. Firstly, fucking mistake if you're Liquid, because what the fuck are you bringing in Canadian for if you're not actually gonna follow him? Like, what are we doing?
Is this a good segue to actually talking about this topic and just leave BetBoom in the past?
Not quite. I need to
All right.
quickly. We'll obviously transition to it, but quickly,
Yeah.
like, if that team ends up making changes, and you get players like, well, my option to veto, like to get rid of, would be Yakinda, would be Skulls. I mean, Skulls obviously not an option for Falcons, but if Yakinda becomes available, look,
You grab him.
he's a yappy little gobshite who thinks a lot of himself, but he's not stupid. Like, he does know what he's talking about, despite being a yappy little gobshite. Like, he's obviously one of the problems, I'd assume, causing, like, the CadiaN doubt, the reason they're not playing fully his style. I would take a risk on him, though. Because compared to dupreeh, he's still, I think, got some prime years of actual fragging left. Whereas dupreeh has, again, he outperforms expectations, but the expectation is so minimal that I think you do need to take a risk on a player like that. And potentially, if another player frees himself up from that roster, or if you want to go looking elsewhere in North America, there's some players to take risks on. I'm not sure. But let's actually, okay, let us transition over to talking about the Liquid stuff. Because it's a bit terrifying. Let's put it that way. It's just terrifying to me that we even have these sorts of rumors circulating so soon. Like, these sorts of conversations being had so soon. There was no reason, I think, for this roster to fail, because I looked at the construction, and you think around CadiaN's open IGL style, you need, really good riflers who can take, like, sort of matters into their own hands, because they are left quite isolated around the map. They've got to, initiate things, take risks. And you're thinking, yeah, you've got your Kindar, you've got Naf, you've got Twists. I mean, Skulls is a bit of a dud in that context, but he's not, like, completely unmanageable. He's not like he's got no skills.
I would have said he was a really good pickup. I think I did say it was a really good pickup when he was on Pain.
Well, I had my reservations about certain parts of his game, but at least mechanically, there was nothing wrong with him. So I was like, you can make it work. But the fact that they've then not used CadiaN's system leads me to believe that they kind of half-assed this. Like, you needed full buy-in from everyone, coach, other star players. That they haven't bought in, that's the most concerning part of this, because this likely means the end of CadiaN in this roster, and I don't know who the hell you're going to bring in to make this mishmash work. Like, you could go straight pug in it, but unless you're just trying to beat M80, I don't think that's really the solution. Like, if you're Liquid, you should be looking a little bit higher.
Yeah, so for context, there was an HLTV report that Liquid were considering removing CadiaN. This report was like made from, like, they talked to several sources within Liquid, and they were like, yeah, this is like the vibe. They're thinking about it. They're not going to make a decision until Dallas or until after Dallas. So we're going to see that there, I guess. I think I put a big thread about this, and I think it's entirely the wrong move from the outside looking in. And it does like tell something about what Liquid were actually intending with this roster, and like building this roster in the first place. Because what I thought it was all right, we're gonna bring in we have the two guys. We have Naf and Kindar. They are undoubtedly great pieces. We're going to bring in another formerly great piece that we worked with in the past. Perfect. Twist is going to do great here. Then we're going to bring in CadiaN. He's probably the best IGL on the market right now at the time. All right, perfect. And then the Skulls guy, I think the next part was like, we're bringing in Zeus, a great coach with a history in Team Liquid, like a history in Tier 1. We're gonna make it work with him, and then he thinks that we should get Skulls out of Brazil because he's a very talented piece or something. I'm pretty sure that would have been the way it went down. And I was like, all right, perfect. Everything lines up. We get the NA majority. We get to stay in America. We get a great IGL. We get a bunch of great riflers. Perfect. And then we're gonna stick it out with a long haul because we're bringing in so many different viewpoints from so many different backgrounds. We're gonna stick it out for the whole year, and we're just going to see how it goes, and then we're going to make changes. That was the way it felt to me, because it was just such a big thing. Like, it was such a huge move. They're building a huge team, and they've obviously screwed up a bit. We've all made fun of Liquid when they lost in like close qualifiers. They missed the major. They would have missed Chengdu if they didn't get like last minute invited. They missed Blast finals because they lost in the first round of the showdown. I didn't expect them to make it past that because I think they had. No, actually, no, yeah, I would have expected them to make it past that because they were probably the best team on that side. It was them or Cloud9, but they didn't even make it past the first round. They did make it to Dallas, but then there was another. They lost the Esports World Cup qualifier or whatever. Like, they're losing to their own local opposition. But when they make it to LANs, they've only made 2 so far. But when they make it, they have a 100% playoff record. Like, this is pretty good for a fresh new team. Like, you're bringing in so many different players from so many different systems and backgrounds. Like, KadiaN moved a whole ass fucking continent to get there. Like, it's not the first time he's been in an A, but like, it's like, and then you bring in a Brazilian coach. You have like different views of how to play the game from three completely different parts of the world. Then you have like this. It's such a mishmash that it needs to be given time to work out. And like, everything looked so good from the start. Everything was like they were doing these vlogs with their psychoanalyst or whatever he is. He was like super prominent in these. And there was like all these team building things and like, we're doing so great. We're making so good progress. And they were like crying on video. And it was like, I love these guys. They're my brothers. And then it's like, yeah. Um, to me, this seems like a team that Falcons would build. They took the biggest names, put them together, and then if they're ready to discard it this fast, that's like them saying, "Oh, we overpaid," or whatever. It just it says something about like Liquid's methodology building this team that is just, I don't know. It doesn't really sit right with me. But yeah, about this, like, apparently KadiaN system hasn't been properly applied. People aren't really trusting in KadiaN. Maui put this really well on Twitter, which was something like, if there's a three-way struggle between Zeus and Yakindar, we've seen how far KadiaN can take a team. We've seen Zeus in like tier 2 Brazil, and we've seen Liquid under Yakindar. We saw how that looked. Who are you backing? Like, who are you backing in this like potential three-way struggle?
Yeah.
It's like they needed to stick it out with KadiaN. They apparently just haven't. Like, I don't think KadiaN stays here. If he stays, I don't think things are going to get solved. And ideally, I would have cut at least one of the other two, and I think most people would agree with that. So I wonder if management are just looking at the Akindar and they're like, we paid so much money to the filthy Russians to get this, we just have to appease him. Like, things obviously look different from the inside, but like, to us, the value of KadiaN is huge. We've seen Yakindar underperforming, probably not very comfortable in this team. We've seen Yakindar call before; it didn't look very great. And still, you back Yakindar in this, and you're like, well, if we just appease Yakindar, then things are going to work out great. Well, like, from the inside, that looks like there's sort of a bias there, and like you didn't really believe in KadiaN to begin with in that case. So
yeah,
I would have rather seen. You've told me Skulls you have your reservations about Skulls, and I can kind of agree with that. Like, I don't think he's huge. He was a good talent. I think he could have worked out, but he didn't. He's also replaceable. Like, he's not one of the guys that you definitely need to have on this team. Yakindar, I think it's just time he goes. I think for him and for this team, I think both would be better off if he left. Like you said, there are teams he could go to. It would be pretty huge if Yakindar was part of a Cloud9 rebuild with Boomage and Exile. I would fucking buy that, to be honest. I would rather cut those two. We also have the obvious Liquid candidate, Mobs MD. He's just sitting there with like a 130 rating on LAN.
He's been available for years though, and took your sweet ass time to go watch some demos, noobs in T1. But
he's been really like, he's always had good stats. He's always had here and there. He was always at a pretty much like a slightly lower level. I still had like, there was still the question mark, like, well, if Molb steps up, is he going to be good? For me, that was always like a question mark. Like, it's not a question mark in that sense. I wasn't doubting him, but like, as with any sort of unproven tier 2 player, there's a stage where you start to believe that these guys are going to work in tier 1. And yet Mobs wasn't really there until this year when he put in that huge fucking EPL. And like, this M80 stint has just been, all right, he is ready for tier 1. There's no excuse not to sign him now. Like, there's just no reason. So someone has to pick him up. And I'm just going to say, Complexity are also having big struggles. They have at least one player who's grossly underperforming at the moment. If you want to be the best team in NA, someone is going to get to Mobs first. It might be M80 keeping him and just building up a great team. It might be Complexity just going for him. And then it might be Liquid who just missed the chance entirely once again. So, yeah, and even for Skulls, there's great pieces out there. Free agent pieces, like the ones I put in my Twitter thread, is like JKS and SDY. I don't think they're like be-all, end-all solutions, but they're probably better than Skulls. And they're free. Like, there's no reason not to sign these players. So, like, if you really want a Skulls replacement, you don't have to look to tier 2 and get someone else Brazilian. You don't have to get anyone. You could get JKS and keep your America's RMR. Like, perfect. You could get this if you cut Yakindar from Mobs, you could get SDY, and that's like, at least you know he's talented, and then you can start over with like trying to build together this mishmash of different backgrounds, because that's what you're doing anyway. Like, you might as well get someone that you know is good. So I don't know. This was a bigger rant than the one I actually put on Twitter, but I just think this is a weird move, super weird move, and I do wonder what happens to all of this.
Uh, how do I see it actually going down? If the reality ends up being that they cut CadiaN, honestly, this team is just lost.
Yep,
It's
again,
just lost. But
like 4th liquid roster in a row that is just lost.
I don't know. I think the idea of bringing in like players for your Kindar and Skulls. Honestly, if cutting Skulls means losing Zeus at this point, oh fucking well. It's not 2020 online, mate. Like we need to see a little more than NA play. And we haven't seen a damn thing out of Zeus internationally since what, maybe 2018. Like he's not been on the level. I'm sorry, I don't hold on to things from 6 years ago. I need something a little more current, especially in the Counter-Strike world. There ain't nothing there, so I would be willing to, if it means losing Zeus, I would cut Skulls anyway. And yeah, goodbye Akindar, goodbye Skulls, goodbye Zeus. MD's the obvious choice. If you want to keep more North American involvement, you can go get, like, instead of Skulls, you can get some other players, like potentially like a Jaber or whoever actually plays the lurk role on MAT. I forget if it's Rec or I think it's Rec. Sorry, the rounds are usually won on the front end. I'm not paying attention to the lurkers on MAT. Like, I'm gonna be honest. Yeah. I'm usually locked up on the MD cam. Or you can just go get a European. Also, I'm one of those free agents you mentioned, because yeah, at that point you do have your 3 Americas players settled. I think you can just go sign a Ukrainian, an Aussie. It doesn't matter.
I think if you're bringing in mobs for your Kindar, you have free hands to sign any European you want and still keep your American majority. If you want to keep your Kindar or like you want to sign a European for him and you just want to replace Skulls, I don't know what you think about this. I think JKS is at least like, you know what you're getting. You're getting a player who can deliver in tough situations. Like you're getting a player that in like base level is better than Skulls. And then you have to work a lot of different shit. JKS to me feels a lot like a workhorse. Like he's going to come in, he's going to do the job, and he's going to do it well enough. And he might not be huge, but he's going to do the job well enough.
Yeah, but do you need a second NAF, like a silent stoic type?
Considering how much like clashes of viewpoints they have, perhaps that's what they need. Perhaps they need some players who just shut up and let CadiaN do his thing.
You are cutting the viewpoints though. Like you're already cutting the guys who are going to have an opinion. One's the coach, one's you can realistically. But no,
yeah, but then maybe you don't want to bring in a whole new viewpoint. Then maybe you just want to say like everybody shut up and let CadiaN do his thing. Like, yeah,
maybe, I don't know. But I don't know. I'd honestly, I'd like the SDY move. I think SDY has been. I think he was underrated a lot during his Na'Vi stint. I think he then doesn't. He gets some appreciation, but not quite enough. I think for his Monty time, because that team had no right being as good as they were, and so much of that was STY. Like we've seen, also a good chunk was Waro and Demku, considering they've managed to maintain not quite the same level. Like they're not at the level they were with STY, but they've maintained a good amount of that without him. So I think everyone involved in that project deserves way more credit than they get. But he does deserve a big move, and I think this would be perfect.
I think
sure, the roles maybe are a bit weird. If you actually look at it on paper, it does get a bit odd. You're asking him to go back to maybe more of a Na'Vi style, where he's like a hard anchor, not getting any rotate spots. But I think he's still good enough. He's good enough to justify it.
I think something SDY could probably take some credit for as well is like elevating the level of other players on his team. I think is something he did pretty well on Monty. Like I would absolutely believe that a part of why Demke was doing so well was because he was playing with SDY. Like I think at that point when SDY just towards the end of it, like when he just went absolutely huge himself, Demke also sort of lifted his own level at the end, and that's when they won the Jönköping land. Like I think he can bring, even if he isn't calling himself, because we have no fucking idea who was calling it on that team. It was either SDY or War2K. It could have been fucking Krasnal for all we know. I think as a voice, he can bring a lot out of his teammates, and I wonder like if you replace Yekiana with someone like Malbs. Malbs probably might need a bit of like something to bring him into tier 1, and I think SDY would be like, then you can support him. Even if you bring someone else in, someone North American, maybe even better. Like at that point, you could have you could be looking at a great team once again. But this is also what we say about Liquid every time. Liquid are just slowly approaching NIP in the levels of management ineptitude. Like, is this where Jonas Gunderson got hired after he left NIP? Like, what's this is? It just reeks of that sort of style of like, we'll get these great players, and then we'll see if it works out. And then 3 months later, it doesn't work out. It doesn't work. It will never work. We're just gonna cut them and get some more other players and see if that works out. Like, because just before this, I listened to the Hampus interview with Thorin, and like, you could have probably replaced, if you replaced all of the player names and like the team names in that whole Hampus interview when he talks about NIP, if you just replace that with Liquid or Liquid players, I think it would apply. Like all of this stupid shit. Like it's just, yeah, they're just getting big name players, and I feel like they're not really. It's not the first time Liquid put together a roster that looks great on paper and then grossly underperforms, and then they probably chalk it up to the wrong person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's been a big problem. I think the last time they got a roster move right and ended up being like the right move to make in everyone's like favor was the Elige cut. Like, that's the last time they made a good move, I think.
Yeah, and even then, the replacements were Rainwaker and Patsy, and that didn't really work out. So
I think there's a whole other conversation to be had about
that is a whole other
in.
conversation. That is a whole other conversation. But like, yeah, it worked out for Liquid and Elige, but did it really work out that well for Liquid? They still had to build like 2 whole new rosters after that to even get to this point. And
yeah, but they were playing terrible Counter Strike, paying Elige a King's ransom. It was 100% because there's no way they paid like even combined Dexter, Patsy and what's his bloody name, Rainwaker, like Elige's salary.
Yeah, sure, but they didn't make any playoffs. Like they just made no playoffs with that roster. So even they're making playoffs. They're making playoffs. This is what's also so weird to me. Like you have
like you have to aim higher. I think like in terms of
you do for sure.
Like it's a bit
you do for sure.
It's a bit sus. Like they're not exactly going out there smashing things. Like they have one win against G2. That's probably the most legit you'd actually like put faith in.
Yeah,
aside from that, it's a bit iffy.
Yeah, they beat G2, and for EPL they didn't really beat anyone. No, they kind of got here just because they played Fury and Monty.
By default, yeah, almost.
And then they struggled against FlyQuest. We talked about this last time. It wasn't a great run. But like they are here. Those are all the lands they've played, and like everyone is going to get a lucky draw sometimes.
Yeah, so, sure.
Yeah, but then of course like they're failing in qualifiers, and I think you're sort of looking at the wrong thing because like you have look at your other NA opposition. You have like M80 playing the same qualifiers, and they are qualifying, but they don't have any expectation of making playoffs. Like you still have the partner structure
when they do. Let's put it that
yeah, but like you still have the partner structure for like the rest of this year. You are gonna have one more ESL Pro League invite. You are gonna have the Dallas invite, which is why they're in Dallas. They didn't have to play qualifier to get there. Oh, they did actually. No, fuck, they did win the close qualifier. But like, you are gonna have like another half year of like this weird partnership thing. You're still gonna have Blast. You're still gonna have this. You can still play events. You don't really need the qualifiers just yet. So work things out at the top level, and like the qualifiers are like next year. That's when that's gonna be big. So it's I don't know. Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on to because this was chalked up in the notes as part of the Eternal Shuffle, but it needed more chat than that. Let's move on to that segment. The Eternal Shuffle, perpetually with us. And there's quite a few moves on here. Nothing. We've pretty much covered the biggest ones already because we talked about Dexter and his addition to Heroic. There's now some other stuff to talk about, less big, but still pretty important, I think. The first one being, this is one of the moves that we missed, I think, just by seconds last week. Something annoying like that. That's Bleed, cutting Cirque and Vladen for Jacob and Nork. Which, initially, when you just look at the names, is a massive deal. Like, wow, amazing. When I thought about it for like a second, I was like, okay, Nork, there's no doubt about it. That was just an upgrade. Cirque, he was given a chance to revive his career under the coach who didn't make it, but like a coach who definitely had some like familiarity with him. It didn't work out. He had some moments, he had flashes, but he was so all over the shop, and I just really didn't think he had a long career in him on this team. Like he was one of the players I would look to cut. And then Jacob for Vladen got me a bit confused because to me it looks like we've kind of not screwed over, but we're kind of signing Jacob at the expense of Cypher here. Am I the only one who feels that? Like we've kind of brought in a guy who does Cypher's roles just a bit better,
Hmm.
and is also going to take a lot of spots from him, and that we've ended up. I don't know. Like I'd rather have seen this move the other way, like Jacob for Cypher, and keep Vlad. And I thought that looked like a more balanced roster composition. But maybe you've got a different take on this. Maybe you're more excited. I'm obviously excited in terms of their raw fragging output. Like Jacob is a beast.
I like the
And
move.
I didn't think it was the right play to cut.
I like the move. I like Knock coming in here. I was pretty much expecting this because when he talked to us at Dust2.se on our interview, he said, "Do you have any offers?" "Yeah, I have one pretty good offer that looks pretty good." And then we asked, "Is it a tier 1 offer?" And he said, "Yeah, according to me, but like probably not internationally." And I was like, "That's bleed 100%." Like they have tier 1 players, and he thinks like, but they're not there yet. I think the early signs, it looked like Cypher was the one getting fucked over because you have 3 players who like playing up front, like they like playing these roles, and you have Hampus, Jacob, and Cypher. And just early on, it really looked like Jacob was the one taking those spots. And no matter what you do have big role clashes here. Cypher and Jacob play a lot of the same positions, so that was always going to be the case. Now that I'm looking at it, it looks like in the few maps they've played after that, Cypher is the one taking opening frags. But as you say, it doesn't like it doesn't really matter if it's Cypher or Jacob being the one fucked over, so to speak. Someone is going to be slightly unhappy or like play somewhere out of position compared to where they've been in the past. Which does make it a bit of a weird move, but I wonder if this is just sort of like a transition thing where they wanted to bring this player in for the future and they just couldn't really piece them in right now. Like they wanted Jacob long term, but they couldn't really piece them in right now. And then later, in a later move, perhaps there could be something to make it work again. But I also kind of like this. Like I think if it is the case that Cypher is the one who stays up front and gets to keep his positions and at the expense of Jacob, I think Jacob, out of the two, I think Jacob is the one who's going to be better equipped to cope with that. I think Jacob has the experience to play worse positions than he has done in the past. So I think that could still work out, as opposed to the opposite. Cypher is, I think, quite one-dimensional. So like if you're forcing him into discomfort, I'm not sure he's going to float. So, but I like the move. I think it's a great move for Nok. Hampus spoke greatly. Like he spoke very highly of Cirque. Like he was starting to see the return to greatness from Cirque. He was like, basically what he said is that Cirque has never been like a selfish player in that regard. He will always just do whatever you ask of him. And that's good for Cirque, I guess. But Nok is someone who's going to take a bit more space. He's going to play a bit more around himself. And I think when you have players like Faven and Cypher, who I think are fine pieces, but they're not going to be the ones to win a game, that's when you sort of need someone like Nok to just sort of come in and just be like, we're going to do this. Like, I have an opening here. Let me get this opening and I'll win the round for you. Like that sort of offer, very proactive. And I think that's good for them. So I like this move.
Yeah, the Nork part of it is undoubtedly an upgrade,
Yeah.
and it puts honestly Bleed in my esteem now. They've gone from like OG on crack to borderline real tier 1, like borderline. They're approaching that sort of like, this will be a team I want to see at events, and I expect them to put up good games, and maybe even occasionally crack a playoff. And like considering who they are and like their relatively small signings they've made, it's pretty impressive. Like they're essentially on the same level as like Liquid have been in my mind right
Yeah.
now. Like they've essentially just gone and matched Liquid despite spending nowhere near as much money and not having like big issues with like IGLs and stuff. So
Mm.
I think they've actually done a pretty good job here. As much as I have reservations about the Jacob Cypher clash, I think Hampus operates in his own little universe. It's not so much of an issue there.
Yeah,
Like, he's just doing his thing anyway.
he is.
But I do think there could be problems there. But I like the initiative they've taken. Like Jacob Nork were available. They could have let them slip away like so many teams do, but I'm sure there was a Cassard connection leveraged as well there because he's very familiar with them,
For sure.
and they made it happen. So good job on the team. They've made upgrades. I just have that little niggle, that little doubt. Like, is this another Cypher cutting incoming? Like, is it going to be 3 months down the line? Oh, actually, maybe Vladden works best in anchor and pack rolls, and we should just let Jacob be used to his full extent. And sorry, Cypher, goodbye. Like, I got a bad feeling just as a guy who wants Cypher to be successful.
Mm.
But aside from that, no, fair enough. Good move.
They are invited to this Mongolian LAN in
Oh yeah,
a little over a week now.
what's it called? It's got a really
It's
funny name.
the Mesa Nomadic Masters.
That's the one.
I am gonna say, honestly, looking at this team list, they might be favorites to win here, just based on who's here.
Isn't the Mongols playing there?
Mongols are there. I would say winning this LAN, I would say, is between Bleed, Mongols, and maybe Gaimin Gladiators. I think it's between those three winning here. Because coming onto LAN, Mongols, I expect them to keep a high level. Can they bring it the whole way to a grand final? I think that's a different thing. When your expectation in like an EPL is to make top 12, and then you make that happen, that's good. But when your expectation is to come in and win as the Mongols, that's sort of a different headspace, and I wonder if they're going to be able to make good on that. But they have the level for it. Then you have like Gaimin Gladiators who played well in the major, like on LAN form. I would probably could have said that these guys can definitely win this event. Aurora, we see them struggle a bit. The two other Mongolian teams, I don't see making anything big happen here. Neither Lin Vision. OG, maybe like an outside contender, but the way they played Get Rio, I don't think they're going to be a huge contender here. Then you have Bleed. Like these are a couple of guys who really like winning, and they're experienced on LAN. Fuck, it looks dangerous to me. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that event actually.
No, it looks cool. I mean, I would say though, based on what we've seen historically from the Mongols, the few times they get to play lands where they're not heavily underdogs, like Extremes Land Asia 2023, they won.
Mm.
ESL Challenger Atlanta 2023, they weren't favourite to win, but they were definitely a team that should like have looked to make it out of groups. And despite being in a group with Apex, Col, and Gamer Legion, they did make it out, and they made the top four. So they have in the past, when they're not massive underdogs, still performed on LAN. So I'm actually taking them like honestly ahead of time to win this event. Although I'm not worried about Gaming Gladiators. I do think Bleed could pose a threat. I think
Mongols Bleed is the final we see. I think.
yeah, Aurora. It all depends on how hot they are. They're so hot and cold, and when they're hot, they're hot. But when they're cold, yeah, they're also abysmal. So we'll see how that goes. But
yeah.
no, that's basically. I mean, I've put an entire timestamp just for Bleed at this point because we spent like 10 minutes on it, despite being just a roster move. Let's move on to the rest of the shuffle. I think we can take these a little quicker.
Yep.
A big one: Fnatic cutting QB, signing BlameF, which is a massive improvement. But I'm just going to recite essentially my tweet that I put out. Like, they are still constructed in a very shabby way. Like, they are a tofu dreg construction of a team. Like, there's still problems in the foundation. That's not concrete, that's just sand, sort of thing. Like, I'm a little worried. We've seen they've debuted, they won a game, and everyone's like, ooh, maybe, and then they lost a game with BlameF given a 1.35 rating. I'm like, there we go. There's what I'm more expecting because I don't see Body as a great caller. Afro streaky as shit. Matisse hasn't really found consistent form. If it's just BlameF showing up, what are we gonna win with? Like, if everything else is going terribly. So I've called them Furia with EU instead of a U. Like, I'm that smart. Thank you.
I thought full honesty, when you put that on Twitter, I thought it was a typo. And
I knew I should have put EU in caps. Like I did on the first draft, and I was like, no, I'll give people some credit. So I put it in lowercase.
I could have sworn that was a typo.
Oh, I'm wasted on you people. Anyway, so Furia, aka Fnatic EU. My God,
It's
I'm not sure about this roster, but it's a nice move. It's definitely an upgrade there.
it's a good move. I think they are at least one roster move away from like being a good team out of this. I think they need to cut one of the Frenchies to get either a better caller or they get a better offer. And
You can just do both.
you
Just
could do
cut
both, but
both.
at least one, at least one, at least one of the French guys has to go. I could probably get behind Body as a caller if he has a better offer to work with, but you could also put in a better IGL and maybe they'll make Afro work a bit more. Cut both also
Yeah,
works.
my mind is just cut both, but I don't know who you
Yeah,
bring in, so it's easy to say cut both. It's a lot
yeah.
harder to do that. So we'll see how they work out. Maybe they can figure things out a little better now. BlameF maybe have not take over IGL ship, please.
I don't
But
think he wants to.
if
But
he
yeah,
can just mentor a little bit or like, give some pointers to Body onto how to be at least functional with a team,
yeah.
then potentially it can work out. But for now, I've got my reservations. Monty have finally filled their roster gaps. They've sent the Academy boys packing one by one, it seemed, based on the announcements, and they've ended up with a roster of Stiko Hadji, Waro Demka, and Krasnal. Yeah, this isn't quite the SDY lineup. Let's put it that way. This isn't SDY and Boros. This isn't quite that good.
Yep.
But it's something. It's at least stability. It's players with experience. Anyone who's followed Hadji's career knows to expect the least. Pray for the best, but expect the worst. Like, he's not ever really delivered on his potential, but the potential is there, and the skill is there. So potentially now he can actually go and do it. But we don't know for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to be really brief here. I think this was among the best they could have done. I think over Rear and Gizmi, this is an upgrade. This is going to be better.
Yeah.
But it's also not like I don't see this team winning a Jönköping level LAN, such as Jönköping coming up, which I think they are attending. I don't see it, but it's something. Hadji is only there as a stand-in officially, so I guess that still leaves the door open for them to make a move. Oh, they are not attending Jönköping. Well, fuck them. They're definitely not winning Jönköping then. But
You're right. I'm sorry. The analysis,
yeah,
100%. Yeah.
yeah, 100% correct analysis record. Quacks, yes. Yeah, that's about it. Let's see what it does. I think Stiko's a good move. I think Hadji, less so, but he's also just a stand-in. Doors open for replacing him. A lot of players could replace him, I think, if you want to look into tier 2. And I think they've been pretty good at that when they brought up less experienced players into this team and made something happen out of it. Still the war on Demka show.
It really is. We'll see how it works out for them. They are attending, what is it?
Dallas.
I am Dallas. So
yep.
We'll get to watch them there. Not too scared about them, but we'll see. We'll see. Next up. So 5W. Is that actually their full bloody name?
5W Gaming.
Jesus. Okay, 5W. So we're just not trying anymore when we're naming orcs. Have signed a roster. And the reason we're talking about it is just because they've signed a bunch of like tier 2 lifetime bowlers. Like essentially, it's all these guys who are always in tier 2 doing numbers but not really winning anything. And they've ended up with Thomas, Red Star, Han, Joel, and Prime Taps. Always Han and Red Star, the sort of black sheep of Bulgarian Counter-Strike. You always end up having to go off and join international teams. I'm looking at this team and I'm thinking, man, I'm really bloody tired of these rosters. Just smashing together players from disparate countries and cultures, hoping that somehow it magically works. And oftentimes taking risks on rather dubious characters who have, in Joel's case, actually kind of fallen off of late. Like, I'm a bit iffy on this entire roster, like from top to bottom. I don't see them doing a whole lot.
No, I think it honestly might be better than what they had at TSM marginally, just because I think Joel, Red Star, and Harn play at a high level. I hate Thomas. I think Thomas is just bad. He is some of the worst players. He's one of the worst players who has showed up ever. So and Prime Taps, I think. I mean, he's 23. He was on Big Academy for like 4 years. How good can you really be at that point? He was there for a huge amount of time. Definitely signing both Red Star, Harn, and Joel is someone already called this team for. They already called it match fixing United.
Yeah,
It's
maybe 5 Ws, the 5 wins they're going to get to put the odds in their favor before they start throwing.
ooh. Uh, yeah, Red Star and Horn. As far as I know, they never match fixed. They were on a
No,
team.
we don't have any proof of them match fixing.
I can
No
I can say
reason to
one thing.
believe it. It's just funny.
I can say Red Star and Horn have played with players who match fixed
Mm.
on the same team, but supposedly they were never involved. It was only just the other three players. From a relatively credible source, I have that, but of course we don't know. Joel, not actually proven to be match fixing for legal reasons. Just
Just
proven.
gambled on his own games, you know.
Yeah, he just betted against himself, so that's a different thing. um, aye, aye, aye. 5W, by the way, Indian org, supposedly on Twitter. Hilariously, whoever runs the socials is not from India, because they spelt Bangalore wrong in their bio, like esports org based out of Bangalore, which is not how you spell Bangalore. I've been told by the Dust2.India guys. They also have no idea who the fuck these guys are. Apparently, it is like it's their owners are from India and they want to open. They wanted to do something in Europe because that's where all of CS2 is, and that's pretty much everything. They just popped up. Like their Twitter account was registered in April, and like when they announced this roster, they had 19 followers or something. Like they're brand spanking new. No one has ever heard of them, and no one knows who they are.
Yeah.
All of my colleagues at like the Indian team for Dust2, they were like tweeting publicly like, "Does anyone know who these guys are? DM me." It's yeah. So yeah.
I did think so. Hang on. So yeah,
Hmm?
technically Bangalore with an A is the anglicized version.
Yes, but Bengaluru is the official name, which I think
Yeah, I mean that's a
is
common mistake to make if you're actually from there. If you write your name in English, you're like in your language, you've always called it Bengaluru, like, and you're like, yeah, that's a
the
mistake I'd accept. Like,
the Indian guys thought it was like, what is this mistake? Like they said this. Whoever runs the socials is definitely not from India. That's what they said. So I'm gonna trust them on this. But yeah,
uh,
yeah,
I will see. We'll see.
yeah. We'll see. We'll
All,
see.
the, all that matters is that no one knows who the hell these guys are. They've
Yeah.
signed one of the most suspect rosters in every way. In every way you can use the term suspect about
Yeah.
a group of Counter Strike players, it applies to this team. Like individuals calling legitimacy, like it's all
I do what
suspect.
I wonder what it means. Like Smooya outright hates Joel after all of that thing broke out, and Thomas and Smooya, if I'm not mistaken, they're friends. Like they're genuinely friends. Smooya has spoken very highly of Thomas in the past. So I wonder what it means. Like when
Because I
Thomas joins the
know,
team with Joel.
because I know the Smuya oftentimes when he was um, writing his essays on Twitter around the Joel stuff
Yeah.
was always talking about how like he'd reached out to Joel and tried to like help him and like tell him no, don't match fix bad, or some other crap. Like that's what he implied in the tweets. I don't know. I'm not reading them
Yeah.
verbatim, and I was always sat there reading them like, are you guys actually friends, or are you just another guy just randomly sending slightly nut jobby DMs to a kid? Like,
Yeah.
and does he
Yeah.
actually hate him, or is he just disappointed for such a massive talent? Like,
I think he does. The way he talks about this team, I like anytime Joel pops up in the news, I think he does genuinely dislike him, but I think he really likes Thomas. So I wonder what that sort of means. Like,
I don't know.
just seems weird. Just seems kind of
I'm
weird to
not
me.
gonna. I don't care for the soap opera of the bollocks.
Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, I don't think this team's gonna do sweet fuck all outside of some smashing like online performances. Like they're gonna occasionally 13-0 like a team that's considered good, and you're gonna be like, how did this happen? I tell you how. They have a bunch of really talented players, and this one time, like you let Dust2 through the veto, so they smashed you. Like that's
Yep.
the long and the short of it. It's not going to be a complicated team to follow. And finally, the least important news, because it basically has already been discussed to death. Metasport have confirmed Plopsky as their fifth. The way it happened is the funniest part of it, and that's all there really is to it. Like when it was announced and all that crap, like was a bit amusing, but aside from that, cool. Metasport confirmed their fifth.
It was announced last night because I was writing yesterday and I was doing the match report, and then my phone didn't send notifications from Discord. I got a message from my boss in the Twitch chat. He was like, "Answer Discord for fuck's sake!" Apparently, Metasport, like a couple of rounds before the end of the game against NIP, they were like, "If we win this game, we're gonna announce Plopsky." And I was like, "All right, it's like 10:30 p.m. Swedish time, so great time to do it, I guess." But that was kind of wild. Plopsky's now official. It's been strongly rumored for a while. I think we talked about it last week. It's kind of weird, but I guess it's gonna work out. They really wanted his experience. I think that's also what Abdi talked about. They wanted the experience, and he's bringing in the experience. It's sort of weird to say because he's only 22, but he already has a huge amount of experience because he's been around for 5 years already. So, good job.
Yeah, cool. Good for them. They now have their 5th. Right.
Yep.
On to the final segment of the show. It's going to be prospects of the week. There could have been other stuff involved, but we ended up going really bloody long. So here we are. Prospects of the week. I'm going to start off because I feel like I know this player fairly well. I've picked Trunic, 20 years old. He's currently playing with Team Space. He was when I made prospects about him, but now they have a slightly different roster. They've brought in Danitz, and they've had a really good run. Apparently because of him and Danitz. Like, those two have been fragging out. Now, Trunic is a player with a varied skill set because the way they approach the game historically in Space is just, there's 2-star riflers. They kind of get to do what they want map by map. Like, they dictate how they play, and then we kind of fill in the gaps everywhere else role-wise. Like, there's no consistent role map to map, but Trunic, and historically it wasn't Vert, or was it Fossil? It might have been Fossil, was the other guy who really got, like, on this map, I get to take the opening brawls and you set me up. And then on this map, we take it in turns, me and Trunic taking these opening brawls. Like, there was really, like, and then when they weren't taking openings, oftentimes Trunic was lurking, like hard lurking. So it was very much a variety show. But he did a lot of it really well, and that's what drew me to him. He also has solid mechanics. He's not mechanically not one of the best players I've ever watched, far from it. But he's solid enough and understands his fights, his angles, and his positions really well. So that's honestly at times more important. And so yeah, really solid player. Got still some potential. I mean, upward movement in the Russian scene is kind of dictated by, do Cloud9 want to bother to get you out of the country, or do Virtus Pro want you? Like, that's kind of like the two teams who can really bring you up. So for now, he's probably just going to be stuck on Team Space, but hey, maybe they qualify for a challenger event. Maybe they make the LAN of, like, portion of CCT or something. So there'll be a player to watch out for if that happens.
He's got pretty good, decent teammates come in just pretty recently. It was Danis and Hagav. Like, they're not great, but like they're coming from above. So I mean, there's
actually, how recently was the Hega move? Because I didn't mention it because I thought it happened a while ago.
A month ago, about.
Oh, so I should have brought it up as well. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah. Oh, he's only 20. Oh, yikes. Yeah. I don't know much about Trunic. He sort of cooled off in the last couple of months. I know I checked his stats because you put him as you had him in one of those prospect videos where you do like a couple at once.
No, he had his own video.
Oh, he had his own video even.
Yeah, he had his own video. Back when I still bothered making that classic style, that 30, 40 hours of work, maybe more, just for 300 views. Yeah, that.
I know. Yeah, I know. He was good, and then I think he sort of cooled off in the last couple of months a bit. He wasn't as statistically hot anyway. But now he seems to be back. I also saw him this week when I was looking at the stats sheet, trying to pick one. But yeah, good player, I guess. Let's see how he goes. I think if you're looking down into CIS for like one of the players that Cloud9 or VP could potentially pick up, I think you are looking at more like someone like the Aurora guys, or now we're talking a lot about Manyo Yes. I think there's still a case for someone like Forrester. I think there's still some ways for him to move into the proper levels, but he's definitely could do something there for sure. And I think
maybe going through BetBoom is actually a more viable option.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
there's going to be rotation at I like to talk about this layer of teams, like CIS teams with undoubtedly good players who probably could do something at some point, but just aren't doing anything right now. Like we're talking, or like aren't too hot right now. We're talking like BetBoom, Aurora, Amcal, Nine Pandas. I think even Paravision to a degree. I think they have the pieces for it anyway, with like Patsy and Artfrost and Jerry. And like eventually there's going to be rotation there. Someone is going to get cut, someone is going to move up, someone's going to be too bad. And that's when I think Trunic is like one of the peak candidates to move into one of those teams. And that's when I think he really has a chance to really take off. Because then he's got like tier 2 LAN invites. He's got like closed qualifiers where he can actually make something happen. Like ECL, I don't know if Space are playing Challenger League right now, but if they aren't, then he definitely has a chance to do it there. So yeah, Tunic is one of the guys I would imagine they're looking at for sure in that case.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've picked a player who he's more of a prospect of the past, but that's sort of why I picked him. I picked Shane of previous Mouse NXT fame. So for me, he's always been like the missing puzzle piece to complete the Mouse NXT project. Because when the second coming of Academy teams in Counter Strike came, like Mouse NXT were the Astralis of Academy teams. That
Yes.
the original lineup of JDC, Sui, Zane, Torshi, and Zershan. And it was always everyone moved up. JDC was the first one to move into the main team, I think. Oh, Torshi might have been the first one. Yeah, Torshi was the first one, and then JDC moved up briefly. He was actually there for a while, but yeah. And then, Sershin moves up, and Sui is sort of semi-loaned to Gamer Legion and then brought back. Everyone has found like their own greatness. But Jane, after that roster disassembled, because they brought in MHL, they brought in Gympat, they built something new. But then when they sold Sui and Sershin stepped into the main team, and then MHL left. They just rebuilt it around Gympat with a whole new roster, and Shane just kind of disappeared into the ether. So I always sort of wondered what became of him. He took a big break when he wasn't playing anything. I think he was just playing some random mixes in like qualifiers and stuff with absolute no-name players. And then now he kind of comes back on Copenhagen Wolves, which is a bad team. But I do not rate this team whatsoever. But Shane had a very good week statistically. They actually played a bunch of stuff. It's not huge wins. They beat Masonic twice, lost to Rhino, lost to VP Prodigy. It's like CCT closed qualifier. But he had a good week personally. And I always, a little part of me always wondered, like, he was always the support player on that team. He had nothing going for him statistically in that sense.
Yeah.
He wasn't the guy who was ever going to get picked up into Mouse NXT into the main Mouse team, because they always had pretty decent supportive pieces on that team. And then, of course, when Kerrigan leaves, well, who's going to IGL? Of course, it's going to be. Actually, Dexter did it for a while, I guess. But when Dexter left, who's going to IGL? Of course, it's going to be Sui, or like prodigy IGL.
Yeah.
Zane joining was never really on the cards because Gympat sort of took that spot when he showed up. And I always wonder, like, what would have become of him if like he stayed active? Because I'm sure he would have had offers at that point. And I wonder if like. Are we finally going to see him complete the project? Are all 5 going to find their way into like top level play? I kind of hope for that. Anyway, honorable mention, because I was sort of torn between 2 players. Matty, he plays on Nom, also played like CCT close qualifier. But his team is coached by a friend, and I have on very good authority that with just some more experience, this guy is actually going to be pretty good because he had good stats this week. But yeah, that's mostly just because a friend of mine coaches the team. Yeah.
Very legit. Very legit.
Very legit.
Okay. Well, that's prospects of the week, and yeah,
Mm.
be sure to look out for those graphics that are going to be coming. But also, if you're not members,
I love those.
Be sure to become members because you get access to an extra, usually like 10 to 15 minutes of content with every Prospect of the Week episode. Prospect of the Week, Retake the Week episode. Oh god, it's been a chain of early mornings. Let's put it that way. I was up at like I had to go to brunch yesterday at like 10. Like, it's been a long weekend.
It's not particularly early, but all right.
Bro, it's Saturday.
All right, fine.
Some of us work a job like 9 to 5 all week. We don't ever get to sleep in. I know you're a student with like fake responsibility, but like as someone who wakes up at like 6:30 all week, not having to wake up at 6:30 on Saturday, usually a relief. But no, here we are. We had brunch. Fuck me. It's been long, so I'm gonna stutter and stumble over everything. But no, become a member. You get access to more bonus shit. You also get access to other videos early, as well as the monthly Q&A, which will be next week. Yeah, next week. So I'll put up that post after this video and be sure to look out for it. But no,
ask good questions.
Yeah, we always appreciate them.
Mm.
We'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.